Thank you for joining us for Lights Out at Houston Public Library. Today I'm going to tell you my favorite story, Red Lips. You see, once there was a girl named Jennifer who lived in Houston, and she shared a room with her sister, and she didn't like it most of the time. Oh, her sister could be such a pain. But one day, her family bought a house in Magnolia, far out in the country, and she was excited because now she had her own bedroom. It was way up in the attic, and she had to go up a stairway and down a hallway, but that was fine because she had her own bathroom even. Well, the day came for them to move, and all her stuff got brought up to her room, and she put away her things, and she made her bed, and she was just so happy. But when it was time to go to bed, she was so tired that she just fell asleep. But at midnight, she was awakened by a noise. It was a scratch, 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 scratch. She said, "Oh, what can that be? I'm way up here on this floor. It can't be any person. It must be the trees. Yeah, let me go and see." And she went to the window, and there was a face pressed against the glass. It was a woman with pale white skin and long black hair and red lips and long red fingernails. And she said, "Do you know what I do with these red lips and long red fingernails?" "No," said Jennifer. And she went and got back in bed. Ugh, that was creepy. But eventually she calmed down and she went to sleep. And the next morning she thought she had just dreamed, being in a new place. And so she went to school, but when she got home, she didn't really want to go upstairs right away. And so she helped her mom wash the dishes and sweep the floor. And her mom finally said, "Jennifer, you need to go to bed. Your sister's been in bed for an hour." "Okay." So she went down up the long dark stairway and she noticed how much it creaked. Creak, creak, creak. And then she went down the long dark hallway and some of the floorboards creaked. Creak, creak, creak. And she got to her door and she listened. And then she opened the door and looked around and then went inside and put on pajamas and went to bed. Now she went to sleep, but at midnight she was again wakened by, you know what? The scratching. Scratch, 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 scratch. Oh, I thought it was just a dream. There really is some sound. Well, maybe it's nothing. And so she went to the window, and there was the face pressed against the glass. It was the woman with the pale white skin and the long black hair and the red lips and the long red fingernails. And she said, "Do you know what I do with these red lips and these long red fingernails?" "No," said Jennifer. And she pulled down the curtain. She ran back to bed. She pulled the covers over her head. Oh. And so she didn't sleep at all that night. She was so creeped out. But the next morning she told her mom, and her mom said, "Jennifer, I knew you were going to have a nightmare. You were eating pickles with your ice cream, and that always will do it. Now just go to school and don't worry about it." So she went to school, but she was so tired that she fell asleep in math class. And then she came home, but she didn't want to go upstairs. So she helped her mother wash the dishes and sweep the floor and take out the garbage and rearrange the furniture. She just did everything she could think of. And finally her mother said, "Jennifer, you need to go to bed." "All right." So she went up the long dark stairway. Creak, creak, creak. And down the long dark hallway. Creak, creak, creak. And she got to the door. And she listened a long time. But she didn't hear anything. So she opened the door. And she looked inside. A lot. Then she ran in and got her pajamas and got in bed in 3 seconds and waited. And at midnight, you know what she heard? Scratch, 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 scratch. "I'm not going to that window. I'm sorry. I'm not going to do it." And then it got louder. Scratch, 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 scratch. And she finally couldn't stand it. "All right, I'll go to the window." Oh, and she went to the window, and there was a face pressed against the glass. It was the woman with the pale white skin and the long black hair and the red lips and the long red fingernails. And she said, "Do you know what I do with these red lips and these long red fingernails?" "No." said Jennifer. Well, tonight I'm going to show you. So the woman with the pale white skin and the long black hair and the red lips and the long red fingernails took one of her long red fingernails and went, and that is the story of Red Lips. Thank you for joining us. I hope you have a scary day. Today, I'm going to tell you a story from the old world. It's about a woman named Lucinda. It was a dark time and hardly anything grew. Lucinda was so hungry and all the plants were dead. There was nothing there to eat, so Lucinda grabbed a spade and she decided she would dig and hope for a potato or a carrot or a parsnip she might have missed. So she dug over here, and she dug over here, and she dug over here, and she hit something solid. So she scraped and pulled it out, and it was a big, hairy toe. It was huge, and it had brown, curly hair all over it, and a yellow toenail with some kind of goo coming out of it, and it was awful. But Lucinda was so hungry. So she took the big hairy toe in the house and she scraped and scraped and scraped until she got most of the hair off. And she scraped and she scraped and she scraped on the toenail until she got most of the gunk off. And she put it in a big pot of boiling water with some salt. And after a while, she poked it with a fork, and it was a little bit soft. So she pulled it out and she ate it. It didn't taste great, but at least she wasn't hungry anymore. She was so full, she laid back in her chair and went to sleep. And after a little while, she heard thump. She said, "What was that?" And then she heard thump, thump, thump. It sounded like somebody really heavy walking. And she looked around. And then she heard thump, thump, thump. It sounded like it was on her stairs. So she looked around and closed all the windows and all the doors and made sure everything was locked up. And then she heard thump, thump, thump. Who's got my hairy toe? And Lucinda thought, I must be dreaming. Just eating that nasty hairy toe and going to sleep. I must be dreaming. There couldn't be anything out there. But just in case, she threw all of her clothes out of the wardrobe and got in the wardrobe and pulled it shut. And then she heard thump, thump, thump. Who's got my hairy toe? And the door to the wardrobe came open. And there was this huge giant. And he looked down and said, "Who's got my hairy toe?" And Lucinda said, "I ate it, and you can't have it back." And the giant said, "Oh, yeah." And Lucinda was never seen again. But the people who came to look for her saw these giant footprints all around her house. And the footprints only had
9 toes. Thank you for joining us for Lights Out at the Houston Public Library.